Welcome to another DragonLance Saga Order of Ascetics news episode. It is Bakukul Dark Ember, the 28th. My name is Adam, and today I was sifting through the Icona Chronos and ran across some interesting news. I thought I'd bring it to you, but before I do that, I'd like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons, and invite you to consider becoming a member or a patron. You can even grab Dragonlance Media using my affiliate links in the description below. All right, today we're going to be covering 22 years since launch. A classic Dungeons & Dragons adventure from the developer of Bloodlines is finally coming to Steam. Then, the new Forgotten Realms books made me feel what I don't like. Made me realize what I don't like about D&D 2024. Interesting article. Then we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons having a resurgence among students and teachers. And we're going to close it out with a 2-year Dungeons & Dragons campaign and what it taught the author a harsh truth about. So let's get into that. Yeah, Corey, twice in one day. Thanks for tuning in. Always great to see you. Always trying to do a 6 o'clock show every weekday while I can. And each day it's a different topic or whatever. On Fridays, it's always a news roundup. So here we are. Let's dive into the news right now. So, 22 years since launch, a classic Dungeons & Dragons adventure from the developer of Bloodlines is finally coming to Steam. Prepare to enter the Temple of Elemental Evil again. All right, well. Long-defunct game developer Troika is best known today for the dark role-playing masterpiece dropped bag of spanners Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. But the year before Bloodlines simultaneously spelled doom and immortality for the studio, Troika released The Temple of Elemental Evil, a similarly ambitious and similarly buggy adaptation of the Dungeons & Dragons scenario written by D&D's co-creators Gary Gygax and Frank Menser. The Temple of Elemental Evil is fondly remembered by Dungeons & Dragons fans for its meticulous adaptation of the scenario into the then newly released 3.5 edition. Quote, "It may not be the best D&D game, but it's the most D&D game," PC Gamer's Jody McGregor wrote back in 2017. Being alone at a computer isn't the same as sitting around a table shouting every time someone rolls a 20 or putting on a silly voice and making everyone laugh, but the Temple of Elemental Evil gets surprisingly close to recreating that atmosphere. The RPG has been quietly kept alive by modders for years, but now, more than 2 decades after it's launched, the Temple of Elemental Evil is getting a proper Steam release. The RPG is being published by Sneg, a Night Dive Studios-ish outfit that has re-released numerous forgotten gems like Chasm the Rift and my beloved Blade of Darkness. While not full remasters a la Night Dive, both games were carefully updated and optimized for modern machines. The publisher's most recent project was Captain Blood, a pirate-themed hack-and-slash that sailed into development hell in mid-2000s and didn't emerge until earlier this year. Before we dive in more, let's watch the trailer together. I'm curious.
In the land of Flanness, there stood a dark temple, from within which the elemental evil was born. Danger has awakened anew, and travelers are assembling throughout the region. In the first PC game to utilize the Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition rules, you are called upon to lead an adventure against the elemental evil by controlling a party of up to 5 adventurers throughout a world of endless depth and danger, in an epic exploration that will take you to the very source of mystery, to the very core of evil itself.
That was fun. No, it's cool. It's a little, it's like if you had multiple characters in Neverwinter Nights game. You know, that sort of top-down, sort of angled view. A little Diablo-esque. But with, like, multiple players like you would find in Final Fantasy or later Dragon Knight or Dragon Warrior properties. What was that called? Dragon Quest properties is what I should have said. In any case, by the sounds of it, the Temple of Elemental Evil will receive a similar treatment. The Steam page says the launch will include over 1,000 fixes and improvements, which include enhanced AI, a refined interface, and countless quality-of-life updates. Sneg points out these Updates build upon decades of preservation work by modders, calling out the incredible efforts of the Circle of Eight and Temple Plus modding communities in maintaining the RPG over the years. The Temple of Elemental Evil arrives on Steam on December 10th. Of course, you don't have to go far for a fantastic CRPG D&D experience these days, with Baldur's Gate 3 having rolled a natural 97 back in 2023. The question is whether anyone's willing or able to pick up the baton, since Larian is leaving behind the Forgotten Realms to pursue its own projects. Wizards of the Coast has promised fans that it's going to do RPGs as serious as BG3, but I don't envy the developer tasked with drinking from that particular chalice. Yeah, I don't think... Wizards of the Coast sucks. There's no universe where they're going to be creating a Baldur's Gate 3 styled video game. They can't even get out shows, let alone a fully, AAA studio video game. They can barely get their products out that are just paper products. They had to take over D&D Beyond from a third party. It wasn't even an in-house thing in order to get it working properly. They started their own 3D tabletop venture, and that shit the bed. WotC sucks. Everything they touch, Dungeons & Dragons included in my opinion, has gone the way of the dodo. Why do you think there's so many wildly successful alternatives to Dungeons & Dragons? It's not because WotC's doing a great job. It's because they're doing a horrible job. And that's why other people are like, I can do better than that. And they can. The only reason why people still play D&D is because of the nostalgia factor of having played D&D as kids. Or they watched Stranger Things and started playing it. Or their theater troupe started to play it. But that's it. And now you've got D&D killer game systems that are coming out. They're just infinitely better at doing whatever the hell D&D thinks it's trying to do with its newest approach. And they're targeting an audience that doesn't even play D&D. It blows my mind. Just totally blows my mind. Okay, so as far as video games go with Dungeons & Dragons, I have zero trust in WotC ever putting anything out that's going to be worthwhile. However, I like the idea of them trying because they might surprise us. They might blow us away. They might actually succeed. How great would that be? And since 3.5 and 3 was their creations, the very first actual D&D system they created, and they heralded it on to 4th edition, then 5th edition, then 5.5, which is the 2024 rule set, then why not give them a shot at this too? Hey, Nacho Man. New Zealand. Wow. Assuming that's NZ. I'm an idiot. Who knows? It could be Nebraska for all I know. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. So are you looking forward to a possible Temple of Elemental Evil game in December? And did you ever play the original of it? Would you like to see Wizards of the Coast give its chance at making a Baldur's Gate 3 styled video game? Let me know in the comments. I am clearly not thrilled with WotC, so I can't imagine that they will ever succeed at anything other than continuing to divide a fan base and continuing to devolve a game system that, in my opinion, was just fine in AD&D 1.5. But I still love 2nd edition too. People have been using Pathfinder. Yeah, Pathfinder's a huge one. The new Daggerheart is a huge one. Shadow Dark is a huge one. And then there's a whole bunch of them that I don't know anything about that are also huge and wildly successful, that people have just moved beyond the overly simplistic and buggy and bogged down version of Dungeons & Dragons that we have today, which even people who love 5th edition don't necessarily enjoy the 5.5 edition of D&D 2024. So it's very, very frustrating. I mean, I created my own game system for my own campaign setting that I have on a completely different YouTube channel that I find infinitely more interesting than D&D. The problem is no one else does, so I don't have anyone to play it with. But what are you going to do? Hey, Sinnerson. How you doing, man? OSE? Yeah, you could do OSE. Old School Essentials. I've actually never played Old School Essentials, to be quite honest. It's one of those like bucket list items that I want to do, and I want to try all these different game systems. I have to then read the manuals, prep the games, get the players willing to try it, find the scheduling time to do it, and then execute amid everything else that I'm doing. And so it becomes almost prohibitive to even try. The evil realm you created is interesting. Oh yeah, Corey, the Dire Lands. Okay, let's do the next article. The new Forgotten Realms books made me realize what I don't like about Dungeons & Dragons 2024. Easy isn't always better. The new Forgotten Realms books are great product if you're a longtime Faerun fanatic like myself. However, they also bring to light symptoms of a new design philosophy that supports Dungeons & Dragons 2024 5th edition revamp, one that I'm not enjoying very much. I got the first hint that from Vecna Eye of Ruin, the big adventure that was supposed to celebrate 50 years of D&D history and say farewell to 5e in its 2014 incarnation. I had high hopes for the book, and I ended up never opening it again after the first read. The plot is dull, setting players on a 200-plus page railroad romp that resembles a bad platform video game rather than a great RPG. I had hopes that at least some of the locations in Eve of Ruin could be salvaged, so I eagerly dove into the last iteration of D&D's most infamous dungeon, the Tomb of Horrors, presented in this book as the Tomb of Wayward Souls. The true horror, however, lay in the description of some of the most complex puzzles and traps. The book suggests that if the players are having trouble with these obstacles, the DM should simply tell them what to do. I heard Gary Gygax's ghost scream in anguish at that moment. Not every book can be Curse of Strahd, however, so I still held faith for D&D 2024 until I got my hands on the trifecta of Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster's Manual. After carefully reading and playtesting, I came to the conclusion that I really don't like this. For a long time, I couldn't exactly point my finger at what was wrong, besides the game being even more unbalanced to the player's side. A rules issue, and nothing that can't be solved with some house rules, or so I thought. After the core books, the first real big release for D&D 2025 landed in November 2025 with Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun and Forgotten Realms Adventures in Faerun. If you read D&D articles on this site regularly, you know how much of a Realms fan I am. I had very high expectations, and as you read in my review of the books, in terms of lore and setting, these books were mostly a success. Like Eve of Ruin, however, they aim to streamline the D&D experience as a whole, but what do we lose for the sake of making the game more accessible? Is this going to plague the current incarnation of D&D for its entire run? The early section of Adventures in Faerun contains something called Epic Destinies. These are suggestions for the DM to set up a character arc with each player before the campaign starts, deciding on milestones said character will have to achieve to reach their epic destiny. The book is literally telling the DM that hand-holding players is good and it should always be done. I'm not one of those DMs who like making life hard for their table. I don't abide by the idea that D&D is competitive between the Dungeon Master and the players. I see it as a collaborative storytelling game, where collaboration is the key to everything. However, I also think that the players should feel constantly challenged. Stakes and risks are what make good stories and heartfelt. Players have to feel that their decisions matter for better or worse. If they can't figure out a puzzle, I'm not going to say, "It's all right, guys, you tried your best. Here's the solution." In the same way, I'm not going to come out during a session 0 with a player and say, "Hey, so where do you see this character going? You want to be a king? Sure, let's map that out." We play this game with random elements, dice rolls, because we like not knowing how things will turn out. The best campaigns are those that develop organically from players interacting with the world without knowing the outcome. There's nothing wrong with shooting for a crown, but I'm not going to give you an exact roadmap at the start. Now, these may look like marginal elements that are easy to get rid of, but I believe that they are also symptoms of a design philosophy that wants to make this game as easy as possible. Further evidence comes from the adventures included in the new Forgotten Realms books. There's a whopping 50 of them. but I would have a hard time calling these adventures. Each is one page or half page long, with half of the space taken by a map. They include a situation, a blurb to tell the DM what this is about, a hook to get the characters involved, and then a sequence of encounters that are always almost fights, with some skill-based tasks in between. They can all be summarized as get the quest, go to this place, fight monsters repeatedly, win. The idea behind this is to make playing the game easier and faster. A DM can pick one of these and with almost zero preparation, sit at the table and have the players go through it like they would a level of roguelike game. I'm aware that setting up a game of D&D isn't easy, for the DM and players both. However, this attempt to speed up and simplify things reduces the game to a sequence of fights so that players can show off their cool class powers. I thought this could be a specific feature of Adventures in Faerun. 5e's campaign setting always contained one or more introductory adventures, so perhaps the designers decided to try something different. However, I'm afraid that this is going to be the standard from now on. I checked Netheryl's Fall, the digital adventure included in the Forgotten Realms Ultimate Bundle. I was excited about the chance to revisit one of my favorite bad adventures from the past and to witness Karsus's folly again. However, this book is not an adventure in the traditional D&D sense. It details some information about the setting, including 2 Netherese cities. It tells you how to run a game set in the distant mythical past of Faerun, with magic experiments going wild and a decadent magocracy on the verge of collapse. However, the adventures contained inside are exactly the same as those you find in Adventures in Faerun, one-page-long lists of encounters. Sure, the book gives you enough info to build your own adventures in Netheryl, but that's the job of a campaign setting. From a D&D adventure, I'd like to get a longish, detailed, and extensive adventure that I can run by the book if I want to. I don't think that chaining any number of these mini adventures over several sessions would make my players particularly satisfied. Indeed, Wizards of the Coast has not been publishing a lot of adventures in the traditional sense for a long time. The standard of 5e has been a big campaign book such as Curse of Strahd, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Waterdeep, Dragon Heist, etc., which require a lot of time to be completed, but at the same time present a fully fleshed out setting to use as you wish. I loved these, but I also wouldn't mind more focused products in the style of 3E's adventures. However, if Netheryl's Fall is an example of what we're getting in D&D 2025, I am not looking forward to that. Looking back at the core books, I now realize the signs have always been there. Every class has been redesigned to make things easier for the players, fewer decisions to make, fewer risks. On the one side of the table, DMs are being encouraged to handhold their players at every stage, be it storytelling or dungeon crawling. From a design perspective, I get the impression that the goal is to make D&D more and more similar to the board game that you can pick up randomly and play over a gaming night. I see the allure in this. Maybe you're playing a long campaign with the goal of making your character Sir Croak, the king of Frogtopia, but it's hard to schedule a regular session. With milestones set up in advance, you can get the Scepter of Bactracia this week and wait until everyone's schedules align next to challenge the evil usurper King Hopper. Or maybe the DM didn't have time to prep, so he selects a mini-adventure and slots it into the campaign somehow. However, this entire design direction doesn't speak to my role-playing heart. I don't think D&D should necessarily be fast or easy. There's already plenty of RPG games on the market that successfully do those things. Complexity isn't something to be shunned in a game design or in life. I love this article. I think this is 100% on the nose for everything WotC has put out in my experience. Look, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to target casual people who like board games with Dungeons & Dragons. And Dungeons & Dragons has never been a casual board game. And it will never be a casual board game. You've already got games like Goonies or Heroes Quest or even the Horrific series of board games and umpteen billion other board games that have that casual element with still, that sort of vibe of you're going on an adventure in a sort of D&D style. You've even got the D&D adventure system games like Castle Ravenloft or Wrath of Ashardalon and all the other ones that do the exact same thing. It's basically 4th edition stripped down rules in a board game. And so they're trying to do that with 5th edition 2024. And what it does is the artwork targets children, and not just like children, but like little like, I don't know how to say this without being offensive. Little children, I'll say. Because it's all cutesy and bubbly, and it's not D&D at all. And so the imagery is not speaking to the actual game itself. The way that they're presenting the mechanics of the game is wildly oversimplified and wildly player-focused, which, again, is awesome, except that it makes playing the game either a straight-up freaking nightmare or wildly off-sided, and it's hard to challenge. And that's why you have DMs who just don't want to DM this game, because they're tired of their players just running roughshod over every single challenge that's thrown at them. I mean, the Dungeon Master's Guide even tells you, and maybe it was even the player's handbook, how many magic items a player should have at what level. That's how granular they're doing the hand-holding. And at 5th level, everyone gets their own castle. Literally, with the Bastion system. So it's such a overly simplistic, childish way, and not childish as in the 80s where the child game was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or the box set of D&D or the basic D&D games. Like, those were still kids' games, yes, but they didn't handhold at all. And no one expects to be handheld. That's not fun at all. And if that is fun for you, why are you playing this game? And if you're designing the game that is inherently not like this into that and seeing it fail over and over and over again with the audience, why do you continue down that path as a company unless you're absolutely stupid? And that is what they've proven, in my opinion, to be. All right, let's see. D&D Beyond is like crack for players. It's hard to wean them off of it. Yeah, for sure it is. Ryan, thanks for tuning in live. Just watched your Kugonesty video for your new PC Elimare. Very helpful. Looking forward to gaming tomorrow. Oh, you're going to be Kugonesty. That's different than the Coolnesty we were talking about. Totally different culture. So we'll have to get into that change. Githnar, thanks for tuning in live. How you doing? Could be useful for those starting out as DMs, perhaps. Not the roadmap to King, of course. I mean, every one of these options, and honestly, the games itself in general could be easy for players to get into the game. My biggest concern is the longevity. Are these people going to be longtime players? Are they going to want to try out different types of games? Meaning, does Dungeons & Dragons turn them on to tabletop role-playing, or do they just see it as a board game to play a one-page adventure, and then they move on with their life? Because ultimately, this hobby needs more people invested in playing tabletop role-playing games of all sorts, not just Dungeons & Dragons. And when the 5th edition caters to a sensibility that is not tabletop role-playing as much as it is board gaming, then you aren't building long-term success with the brand or with the hobby. You're building short-term sales, which I get from a corporate standpoint. They need to improve every single quarter, and that's how they run their business, is to make Skrilla. But that's not going to help the hobby. It clearly hasn't helped it. What saved the hobby was Stranger Things, a Netflix streaming series saved the hobby, not the products that they were putting out. And then from that, Critical Role saved the hobby. And that's just an actual play series that could use literally any gaming system, as they've proven now by switching over to their own Daggerheart system. So it's not helping D&D by doing this approach. They're just doing short-term gain for long-term loss. And that is foolish. I just don't understand why anyone with a business background would ever make those choices. Bob Gnarly, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. You do miss the 32-page modules of 1 and 2E. I loved those old modules. Like, they were great. And I've played some on this channel. I mean, they're just a lot of fun. For WotC's next edition, they should come out with 2 versions against Basic and Advanced and really go deep into mechanics like 2nd edition for the Advanced. Hey, Chris, thanks for tuning in, man. It would be interesting if they came out with another edition, but I don't trust them to be able to come out with an effective edition. You know, they're going to come out with cutesy little bunnies fighting over cotton balls. Like, all right, if that's your thing, that's awesome, but it's certainly not my thing. All right, so are you guys invested in the way that Wizards of the Coast is creating Dungeons & Dragons 2024 content with their gaming approach to that content and with their aesthetic sensibility? And there are no wrong answers. If you love it, then that's awesome. You love it. That's good. It's a good thing to like something. I just don't happen to like it. And as I've always said, the best role-playing game is the game you want to play in the way you want to play it. There's no right or wrong answers when it comes to a hobby of a game. It's just whatever you like, and that's okay. We don't have to agree. It's nice to share ideas, though. You know what I mean? All right, let's see. It's the hook, perhaps. Some may try it. Not all may have the full advanced version, but at least you have some dice getting wet. So, yeah. No, and you're right. You're absolutely right. I think it is a net positive that people get exposed to it and not see it as something like strange or nerdy or anything like that. You know what I mean? I like the idea that people are playing. I do. Get where you're coming from totally. You're from 1-2 Rollmaster background, so you get it. I've mostly switched to DCC and Castles and Crusade. I want to try Castles and Crusade so bad. Gig, thanks for tuning in. How you doing? Still think AD&D 2nd edition is the best phase of D&D? It was an epic phase. I played a lot. Years of 2nd edition. You hate the new aesthetic. You like the grim, dark, and dangerous. I'm with you, Ryan. I do too. 100%. All right, let's talk about this next article. Dungeons & Dragons has a resurgence among students and teachers, and I cannot tell you how happy this article makes me. At a time when elements of nerd culture are a popular, pervasive, and sometimes even overwhelming force in media, the most surprising example may be the explosion of Dungeons & Dragons in podcasts, films, animated series, live on stage, game playing, and even classrooms. Often spurred by popular demand from students looking for a welcoming place to play the game with friends, teachers are drawn to the game based on the creative fun of it and the way the game can help develop social skills and teamwork in a cooperative game built around fluid use of basic math skills and collaborative storytelling. So, just asking. Sun Prairie's Patrick Marsh Middle School has proven a wild example of what can happen when someone stops to ask. Their club is now in its 2nd year, starting with students asking Restorative Practices school liaison Madeline Andrioni if they could start a school D&D club. She brought in 7th grade teacher Jessie Hunt, who is more familiar with the game, to help her run it. Quote, "We thought we were going to have like 10 kids, and last year we had 28, said Andrioni. This year we're at 22 that we had to cap at. That afternoon was quieter with several kids out for a cross-country meet, but otherwise it's a consistent becoming priority for a lot of students. The room is low lit with Christmas lights draping the walls and the TV set to a YouTube channel of a calm background such as light music in a forest or fantasy tavern. While Hurst was more familiar with the game, neither had played it before. Their experience had been through video games based on D&D like Baldur's Gate 3. Part of that, Hurst says, came from what little they had seen of the game before. Quote, "I always really was resistant to do it in person because I had that image in my head of the YouTube video of that guy running away from the police yelling, 'Fireball, fireball, fireball.' And I was like, wow, what huge nerds," said Hurst. Well, it turns out that I'm also a huge nerd. It's difficult to place the game embracing the role-playing while also being self-conscious, which can be a hurdle for potential players. Once I had given that up, it was fine. Once I stopped worrying about being cool, said Hurst. But these guys just get into it According to Andrioni, she hasn't come across any uncool factor, but when dice and character sheets are out, sometimes students will ask about it and she'll say, "Oh, that's for Dungeons and Dragons." And over the time, the club grew by word of mouth. They're in all sorts of clubs, Andriona said of their players. It's not just young, nerdy kids. There are jocks and your preppy kids and kids you wouldn't expect that they would sign up, and I would be thinking, interesting. Seeing how much fun the kids were having She later set out a staff email to gauge interest for an adult campaign, and now there's also a weekly game made up of some Prairie Middle School staff that meet at a game-oriented bar in Madison. That's awesome. I just got to say really quick before I continue on this. When I was in high school, it was middle school. When I was in middle school, my friends and I played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons at my buddy's house all the time. But I heard that there was a role-playing game club in my middle school, and so we went to it, and they were playing Rifts. It's like a futuristic type game, but it's also a TTRPG. And so I was like, "Hey, can I sit in and play? I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for years. I love it." And they're like, "Yeah, sure. That'll be awesome." And then I sort of rolled up a character, and then they completely ghosted me on when they were playing, where they were playing, and to meet to play, and everything. They just totally ghosted me. I felt like I was ostracized or something. And since then, I've never tried Rifts again because I had such a bad experience with these people who said that they accepted me into this little club and then completely abandoned me. And I admit, I'm annoying. I can be an annoying human being. And I was infinitely worse as a kid, but I felt like every one of those kids were just as nerdy and annoying as I was. So what the hell? You just and they were like complaining that they didn't have enough players. I was like, dude, I'm here. I'm ready. Let's do this. Nothing. Just asses. All right. High fantasy and hard numbers. The game traditionally involves a group of players creating personalized characters of different species, drawn heavily from Tolkien lore of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, with humans, elves, orcs, dwarves, etc. Those characters are then given a class like Ranger, Wizard, Druid, Rogue, or Barbarian, which then gives each character unique context, skills, advantages, and disadvantages. The Dungeon Master or DM then organizes the game with a roughly planned story, guiding the party through a campaign of various challenges, including battles, puzzles, exploration, or whatever else the DM may imagine. Likewise, the players are only limited by their characters' characteristics and their own imaginations. Within the rules of the game, overseen by the DM, players can take things in whatever direction they like, whether that's through battle, or choosing to negotiate, or developing relationships with other characters. The success or failure of those actions and reactions are determined by the roll of a 20-sided dice, with 20 being perfect success and 1 being abject failure, and more difficult actions requiring a higher roll to succeed. The openness of the game also poses a hazard, with players potentially taking the game well out of what the DM had planned, or possible general appropriateness. Andrioni recalls one game where the players veered into having their characters do illegal activities, to which Hurst said the advisors put a quick end to that. Otherwise, the students have been good with what they do with their creative freedom. That afternoon, one of the running campaigns with 4 boys playing around a table involved a kidnapping and Pinkertons. The campaign DM, Ollie Miller, was introduced to the game through his parents when he was about 7, and he decided he wanted to DM this year. While there are books and volumes of online content available for pre-made campaigns, Ollie had an idea for something he wanted to design himself. "I'm basing this off of a book," said Miller. "It's a book that I read that had a similar feel as D&D, and I thought this would be a fun one to DM." Herding cats. While D&D is popular with players starting around middle school age through adults, where it often falls apart is due to organization, and the challenge getting all players together for a game that, for serious players, can take up to several hours. Joe Alfano, who is an organizer for Madison's D&D Adventure League, sympathizes with that challenge. Among the many campaigns he's led and been a part of, he points to the Netflix show Stranger Things, for an example. You have to have that Eddie Munson. In Season 4 of the show, Munson was a favorite character, a charismatic leader of the Hellfire Club, pardon me, where the show's heroes would play D&D. For him, the scenes of that middle school age characters playing long sessions of their D&D in friends' basement was remarkably close to his childhood. "It is changed, sometimes by crawls and sometimes by leaps," says Alfano. "It was very mathematical at the beginning, using math and memorizing charts in the way math was done pre-1980. It takes a particular kind of mind to enjoy that. Over the course of 5 editions, changes have been made, and in the recent 5th edition, had less a focus on the mathematics of it and more on story and character development." The idea of a game. D&D has evolved to a point that, in discussion, it bears asking whether the conversation is about Dungeons & Dragons, the branded game produced by Wizards of the Coast, a subsidiary of the toy giant Hasbro, or tabletop role-playing games at large. And while players can get into the world of accessories, including different kinds of dice, character figurines, battle maps, and models, and all the ways to specialize furniture, the actual requirements to play are only a set of dice, paper, and a pencil. More than being purely hypothetical, it is done and was the way that Oliver Batts, one of the DMs with the Poinet Middle School Club, ran his first campaign, on a bus with a notepad and a pencil. The Poinet Middle School's gaming club started last year, but took off this year, going from a handful of kids to 13 to 15, filling up social studies teacher Michael Duvall's room every Thursday. For a lot of players, their first time playing is this club, says Duvall. There's so many new people. I never dreamt that it would be this big, said Batts. Although he doesn't play anymore, Duvall says that some of his core memories are of playing role-playing games with friends in middle school and remembers the ups and downs of the game's popularity. D&D was first created by Gary Gygax in 1974 in Lake Geneva, which remains a recognized mecca of tabletop gaming and hosts the annual GaryCon convention in his memory. It had a Saturday morning cartoon from 1983 to 85. During the 80s, D&D also became the target of a moral panic, in which it was accused of inspiring violence, youth suicides, and satanic practices. One of Tom Hanks's first starring roles was in a 1982 after-school special called Mazes and Monsters, playing a teen who loses all grip on reality through a D&D-type game. As the urgency of the panic era faded from memory, the game got an immense boost, being featured in the Netflix show Stranger Things, which premiered at a time that live role-playing programming was gaining momentum with groups like Dimension 20 and Critical Role, of which their first two campaigns have since been adapted into two separate animated series for Amazon Prime. I think that Dungeons & Dragons really stands out because it gives a lot of freedom, said Batts. I have a friend do some crazy things and practically do all the entire campaign and win because he was just that creative and resourceful what he could do in that specific scenario. As well, Duvall points out that while it came out of fantasy, it has become potentially genreless. You can make it a Western, you can make it Japanese Yakuza, or a neon crime story. You can do whatever you want. We've been wanting to do a steampunk campaign, said Batts. It's one of the most common parts of D&D. Batts only started going to school in Poinet this past January, and previously went to school in DeForest, where D&D can hardly be mistaken for a recent fad. The DeForest High School's D&D club started about 18 years ago, with students approaching science teacher Bill Jameson, and continuing with ups and downs from year to year. There were years where nobody was playing D&D, or no kids that were playing D&D were coming to the club. They would play other things, said Jameson, but the advent of 5th edition and then the podcasts and YouTube channels of playing D&D have enormously increased interest. In his room with two campaigns going at separate tables and another running in a common area, the lab setup works well for gaming, with DMs marking out maps and players on whiteboard tables. I know that the game over here is much more story-oriented, and there's much more character development and character play that occurs, said Jameson. I've never talked to a kid about, well, what do you want in your D&D game? It really feels like they come in, they find the group that matches who they are. At one table, there are 4 kids in a campaign, including a rogue dwarf, a half-orc, a human artificer, and one girl playing a saltwater Murrow barbarian. Meaning that I'm massive, like 18 feet tall, she said, explaining that she got into it after her brother had been playing D&D at the library. So I joined the library campaign, playing as a barbarian kobold, who was also 10 feet tall when he went into rage mode. So as you can tell, I like being very big barbaric characters. I am biased towards barbarians. They're the best class. Their DM Danielle, who not entirely thrilled with having to account for a character being that size and what situations they would or wouldn't fit, but it is an exercise in compromise between the players and DM. Abby was whining when I made her only 10 feet tall, she said. These games hinge on someone volunteering to be a DM, which offers creative control, but also potentially a lot of work running the game and planning it. Many times I've had students realize, this must be what it feels like to be a teacher. I'm trying to control 6 children and, said Jameson, being a DM is a lot of work, and it takes a lot of planning, and in the years where the club nearly died, it was because no kid was willing to put in the work to run the game. Just pretend. Be more. Pardon. While the options to play as a human, elf, half-giant barbarian, or a gnome add variety to the fun of the game, some argue that there can be something deeper to it. For one, Jameson highlights relationships at the heart of every game. To look at this as a teacher, the biggest value of D&D is that it teaches those kids social skills that they're not otherwise getting, and especially now with kids spending so much time on their phones, said Jameson. Watching them grow from freshman year to senior year, I can see development in their interaction dynamics and their ability to communicate and work with each other, and I think it really has positive benefit for the kids. One student, he recalled, was extremely withdrawn in class, barely talking to anyone, but in the context of the game, it was different, with that student animated, engaged, and interacting with other students. but that's because he felt safe and comfortable in that setting, said Jameson. And when he could play that role, he had no problem being outgoing and interacting. But in standard classroom setting, he didn't like to interact. For some students, he said, the club amounts to a sort of social emotional learning program, which is something that Duval also attested to from the relatively short experience of Poinette's club. It's all about reading, listening, speaking, thinking, emotions, being sympathetic and being empathetic. It covers a lot of territory that as an educator, we want kids to be picking up, and they're happy to do it, says Duval. We have some programs here at school that some kids have to be dragged kicking and screaming. Well, here we are, sitting people around in a circle, and they are more than willing to engage. I've only been going to Poinet for 2 years, said Oliver, and I knew when I got here that I wanted to do this, and it ended up great. I met a lot of fun people, and those people are willing to hang out with me and sit with me at lunch, and we bonded. We really got close. I think that is probably the greatest part of, especially as a young kid, playing Dungeons & Dragons. Look, everyone's weird in their own weird ways. Everyone is. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone is weird. We try to be cool because we don't want to be seen as that weirdo. But once you realize that everyone is weird, you can stop being afraid of it and just be yourself. You don't have to be yourself times 1,000. You don't have to overreact to things. You can just be you. And when you find other people that resonate on the same wavelength as you, it's magic. And that is the best possible outcome of having a D&D club. You find other people that you resonate with that are as weird as you or a complementary weird as, with you. And that's brilliant for young kids who, again, in modern society are often just sitting on their phones watching other people pretend to be so much happier and more successful and enjoy life so much more than they're experiencing right now. And it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be isolated and alone. There are gaming stores, there are libraries, there are schools, there are online groups. There are tons of websites where you can go and play D&D and meet other weird people just like you. All you got to do is look a little bit. And you can find it. And I welcome everyone to try to find it if you haven't already. There's nothing wrong with playing this amazing game, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being as weird as you inherently are. It's okay. You're you. That's all right. All right. What do you guys have to say? Hooey. They never should have called it Sigil. The best idea WotC had in the last 5 years was the idea of Sigil, which aspired to be a Baldur's Gate level tool for DMs online. But they failed. Yeah, they failed that horribly. You wish the early internet was easy to access for second edition material. Everyone on the WotC side was more interested in 3.5. Yeah, for sure they were. That was rough. In the early 2000s, moderators would crap on you for asking about 2E, which led you to believe that they're curated by WotC overseers. I think people just like to gatekeep. They like to gatekeep editions. They like to gatekeep campaign settings. They like to, whatever it is, whatever they're into, they like to gatekeep it. And I think it's a normal, unfortunate, but normal reaction to something that you're really, really passionate about. It's something that I have to struggle with this channel sometimes when I'll see a comment that might rub me the wrong way or might be in stark contrast to what I know of Dragonlance. And I have to gauge my response carefully because what I'm trying not to do is push anyone away from Dragonlance. I want everyone to love Dragonlance because it's awesome. And I want people to love playing tabletop role-playing games because they're awesome. But it is hard sometimes when you're just like, oh, that's not true. This is the case. And you just sort of put it out there, and then suddenly you're like, oh shit, that could be read very aggressively, or that could be read very demeaning, and that is not the intention at all. And it's hard to get tone in typed out replies. And so it is something that I struggle with myself. You're 56, your mom forbade you from playing D&D, so she would go up in the attic and play. Nice. My parents, they almost stopped me from playing, but then they looked through the monster manual. This is all first edition stuff. They looked through the monster manual because I started playing because my stepdad had the box set and so the basic set. And so that's what I started playing. And so when they heard that it was like satanic, they looked through it and they were like, okay, this is not satanic. You can play. It's fine. They did a little homework, and I'm glad that they did because, I met a lot of really wonderful human beings and had a lot of really great experiences by playing this stupid game. You play 2E, that's so, yeah, I could see people saying that. You only have the original AD&D DL modules, 2021 book yourself, never saw later versions. There's a lot of really great D&D Dragonlance content out there. If you ever get a chance, definitely go check it. You sent an email earlier about Galaxy Quality Makeup. Oh, I haven't gotten to it yet. I'll get to it. The blue box set had it. I'm not familiar with the blue box. I had the, it was the first one in the early set or the late 70s. It was, I think it was Holmes. It was the red box with the red dragon on the cover and the wizard casting a spell and the knight with his bow and arrow. I think it was the Holmes one, but it was great. I loved it. And so you used to sneak out to a bonfire to play at scout camp. Nice. D&D night every camp out. That's cool. Yeah, basic D&D for sure. All right. Well, that is that article. Did you guys ever play when you were in middle school or high school? Was it seen as too nerdy for you to feel comfortable going to a school or a library to play? And so you had to sort of do it at like campouts or over at your friends' houses like I did it? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested. I'm really interested in how people got exposed to tabletop role-playing the first time and why they keep at it. What is it about this game, this style of gaming, that draws you in and keeps you coming back for more? Because look, I get frustrated running games all the time, and I feel horror. I have like crippling depression sometimes. And so like some gaming sessions I'm done and I'm just like, F this, I'm never doing this again. Like I cannot stand this game. I cannot stand doing it this way. But then I'm like, well, I want to spend time with my son online. And so we'll play a game. Let's just keep doing it. And so I've just kept going, even when it's absolutely frustrating or I want to pull my hair out or I'm just sick and tired of it. I still play it because I get to hang out with my son and some friends, and I get to play with Dragonlance, and I love that. So, yeah, why do you guys keep coming back? All right, the next article, and the last. A 2-year D&D campaign taught me a harsh truth. Trying to put together a multi-year campaign in Dungeons & Dragons sounds like a fool's errand. It's the kind of well-meaning idea that I've seen crash and burn many times. Between scheduling conflicts and DM planning, it can quickly become a headache, especially if players aren't engaged enough. But there's something enticing about the idea of spending literal years as the same characters in the same setting, working toward the same goal. It's the main reason why my group, which has been playing D&D every week since 2020, decided to go for it. I mean, why not? We're already playing together most weeks, so a long campaign shouldn't be a problem. Thankfully, 2 years into the campaign, we're still playing, but we all learned a valuable lesson along the way. Why long D&D campaigns are always challenging. Partially inspired by a friend's group that has been playing D&D for over 30 years, we decided to give it a shot in earnest and start meeting weekly. Taking turns DMing, my group and I played through both official books like Rime of the Frost Maiden and our own written adventures. We've played other tabletop games like Pirate Borg and Vaesen along the way, but there's something about D&D that keeps calling us back. So diving into a years-long campaign sounded like a fun idea. We knew what was arguably the biggest risk: scheduling conflicts. We're all adults with families and full-time jobs, so scheduling conflicts come up. We're used to it. Still, these were the top problems I'd heard from friends who'd tried it. People drop out. People lose interest. DMs get bored and underplan. People get distracted with the hottest new thing, whether it's a new adventure module or new subclasses to try out. They fall in love with their character. Admittedly, the idea of playing the same character for multiple years was my own biggest concern. Could my group really keep that going? Subbing in party members to keep the campaign going. With the best intentions, we decided that we would only play when we could all make it. One person had to go to their kid's cello concert? No problem. The rest of us would do a one-shot instead. Somebody has to work late? That's okay, because the others will just play a quick game of the One Ring RPG that night. This, of course, quickly fell through. If we never played when a single person was out, then it meant we rarely played in this campaign at all. At one point, there was a full month when we didn't touch. When we met up, we played a different tabletop RPG instead, or just talked about boring adult things like insurance premiums and more fun things like X-Men comics. Eventually, we decided to simply sub people in and out. Sometimes it meant I was playing my own character and my missing friend's character simultaneously. Other times, we just pretended like our missing friend's character was asleep at the inn or off on an errand. It wasn't ideal, but it meant we could keep going with our multi-year campaign. Sometimes people just can't make it. Now, 2 years into this campaign, it's not perfect, but we're making it work. It's a harsh truth we all had to face. Most of the time, not everyone can make it. It's not because we're bored or our DM didn't plan accordingly. It's just because life gets in the way. But as much as we miss the people who don't show up that week, we keep going. Anyone planning for multi-year campaigns should prepare for that. Not everyone is going to show up. If you try to only play when everyone is free, the campaign is most likely going to fail. Some weeks, there might be only 2 of us and the DM, but we persevere anyway, and it makes us love the weeks when everyone can get together even more. The sad truth is, if we wait for everyone, then it's really when people start to lose interest. Not because this particular Dungeons & Dragons campaign is boring, but because it's hard to get invested in characters and stories that you're only seeing once a month or even less. And really, boredom is the ultimate campaign killer. Yeah, this is a problem I run into on this channel. The Shadow of the Dragon Queen game, I had like 12 different players throughout that campaign until we finished it. It was brutal, from players coming in to players dropping out. I have a standing rule: if you cannot make, if you're absent for 3 sessions in a row, then you clearly can't have time for the campaign and you must move on. It's been a long-standing rule since Shadow of the Dragon Queen because of Shadow of the Dragon Queen. You have people that are gone for like 2 months and then come back in like, hey, what's been going on? And you're like, everything? I can't, like, what? This is so unfair to the other players who are invested and showing up to play. And it's wildly disrespectful to me for putting all this time and effort into it, and you just sort of show up willy-nilly whenever you feel like it. And it's live streamed to an audience. So it's more of a performance than a home game. So there's so many reasons why I run it the way I do, but I can't stand it. Look, I have a Vampire the Masquerade, What We Do in the Shadows actual play on another channel of mine. We're only 2 of 3 sessions done, and I can't do the 3rd session because the people that were in the 2nd session, which was fewer than the 1st session, I can't ever get together at the same date and time. And so there's no universe that I can see at least in the coming 4 or 5 months where I could possibly get everyone together in order to finish this 3-shot game. It's just, and the thing is like the people that I can't get together are kind of important for the dang game thus far. And so if I just have someone else play their character for that last game just to get it over with, I feel like I'm cheating the player. And it kills the entire game, you know? And I don't want that when it's a streaming game at all. And so that's why I sort of have that rule. And if you can't make a game, someone else plays your character, point blank. And if you don't like it, then you shouldn't be in this game, you know? So that's just how I run it because, yeah, it is hard doing a long-term campaign. I stopped doing Shadows of the Dragon Queen like twice before I picked it back up and we finished it. And I ran other modules in the interim like DL1 and DL2 in between those. I even did Dareguard Keep once, and then I did Dareguard Keep again in Tyranny of Dragons, where I also stopped the game and walked away from it, and then started, played some AD&D games and my DL6 DragonLance campaign or adventure, and then I came back, and we're continuing on now. But you have to have people that are willing to play, and we all understand life gets in the way. But if you can't make the game, you can't be in the campaign. Like it's so unfair to everyone to have you just popping in and out whenever you want. It's so much worse than not paying attention during the game. When your turn comes up and you're like, what's been going on? You're like, you've been sitting here. What the hell are you doing? Because you're not paying attention. All right, what do you guys got? Jonathan, thanks for tuning in. You used to sneak out to a bonfire. Oh, yeah, I saw that. Let's see. We had a D&D group at your middle school back in 99. You joined it for a whim because you loved Lord of the Rings, got hooked right away. Nice. That's cool, Ryan. Nothing at all in school tabletop was later for you, late teens, that you loved high fantasy. Oh, that's cool. Never played a DL campaign, always hybrid. That's all right. Whatever games is good. I only play DragonLance when it's on this channel. Every other time I play, it's some other system and some other game. VTM is a good system. I don't know what that is. VTM. Oh, Vampire the Masquerade. Duh. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right. I mean, the What We Do in the Shadows campaign is very tongue-in-cheek, cheesy, goofy, silly, as intended. Like, it's supposed to be that way. But when I did, like, the Evil Dead with the Army of Darkness tabletop role-playing game, that was gory and still funny to cut the edge and stuff, but it was, like, raw. Like, rough and sexual and, like, raw. Yeah, and I mean, we're going to be doing a Call of Cthulhu next, and we're going to be doing Werewolf the Apocalypse, and I played in Nominee. I love in Nominee. I'm a huge in Nominee fan. Love that game system, did an actual play of that. So, like, I just love tabletop role-playing games and storytelling and stuff. So that's really what I wanted to bring to the table for this news. There's not a whole lot of news when it comes to D&D. What I'm going to be doing in future weeks is, if the news is also sparse, then I'll look at general TTRPG news rather than Dragonlance or Dungeons and Dragons news. And that way I'll have a whole lot more stuff to talk about and bring here. Because look, I played Dragonlance campaign setting in a whole lot of different game systems. It does not have to be Dungeons and Dragons. It can be literally any game system you want. So bringing different game systems here to talk about, to present as options for a Dragonlance campaign, I think would be very interesting. And I think it'd be worthwhile to at least have a conversation about, you know what I mean? So yeah, you played Chainmail? Oh, I've never played Chainmail. That's cool. You always wanted to explore the Age of Might, working on a homebrew for Istar campaign with Lost Battles of Cat. Oh, that would be really fun. Yeah, that'd be cool, John. All right. Well, that's all I had. Let me know what you guys think. Are you interested in that video game that's being re-released with updates and corrections? How do you feel about the direction that D&D 5th edition 2024 rule set is going with adventures and the core rules? Do you appreciate Dungeons & Dragons being hyper-focused in middle school and high schools for school clubs to get new players into the hobby? And finally, do you play in long-term campaigns? Let me know in the comments below. Feel free to email me at info@dealsaga.com. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this content and this channel. Thank you, creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of DragonLance Saga, and I hope you'll join in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.